From the Ticats Audio Network, this is Tiger Cats Game Day with Courtney Stephen and Mike Daly.
Welcome back to another episode of Tiger Cats Game Day on the Ticats Audio Network. It's a Friday game day, and we're back for round 2, Argos versus Ticats. This time in Hamilton at Tim Hortons Field. Kickoff at 7:30. Mike Daly, Courtney Stephen. Mike, you'll be in the building tonight to watch this one live with me. So what are you expecting to see from the Tiger Cats, who are heading out onto the field without their starting quarterback, Dane Evans?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough, right? Because Dane has been one of those constants that, he's been putting up yards, been putting up, been playing really well, I think, and making that offense roll. But I do think that, we would be remiss to say that I think a lot of people are excited to see what Matt Shiltz can do on the field. So I'm curious to see how the Ticats start this one. Because when you look at the last game against Toronto, right, in BMO Field, they came out and they were pretty creative with some of the stuff they were doing. Their play calls, how they were using people, right? You see Matt Shiltz catching a bubble screen, taking it 20 yards.
Didn't know he had that in his repertoire, did you?
Man, I knew he was an athlete, but to get downhill like that was awesome. But it was very creative, right? A lot of lateral movement, getting, receivers in the backfield, getting running backs out as receivers. So I'm curious to see with Shiltz in now as a permanent starter, is that what they go to? These, obscure play calls, or is it just, okay, we're going to run our Ticats offense like we have Dane in the backfield, but now it's Matt Shiltz run this Ticats offense as we normally have seen it. I think that is, that's what I'm going to be looking for today while I'm watching, because that's really, I'm imagining, what's on everybody's mind.
And Matt Shiltz is a guy who's played in this league, spent most of his time with Montreal, 61% completion on the career in the last 3 years, or the last 3 seasons since 2019, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's got just over 260 career attempts. So it's a lot better than when some of these teams fall on the inevitable quarterback trouble and they have to put somebody in the game who is unproven, has no battle wounds, no scars, no bruises. He's not toughened up by the league yet. So I think the Ticats will be pleasantly surprised today by Matthew Shiltz, who has gotten wins in the CFL before. But I'm sure we'll talk about the quarterbacks a little bit more as we go on. Let's talk about the rest of the lineups. Ticats, of course, bitten by the injury bug. Braylon Addison, a fan favorite, Mr. Clutch on second down. He will not be with the Ticats for the rest of the season as he is undergoing surgery to repair a ruptured Achilles tendon. We wish him the best, but stepping up as they do. The receiver core has a couple of new faces. Well, there was a new face last week with Mike Jones. He also got hurt. And so we get to see the young stud, the rookie, getting his first start. Keandre Smith. Now, this is a guy that's full of confidence. What do we see from him in his glimpse that he gave us last week in Toronto?
Yeah, I thought he showed up really well, right? He came in, he made some plays. I mean, you saw Mike Jones get out there and get a bunch of opportunities early on. So as soon as Mike Jones went down, Keandre came in and got those same type of opportunities and made some big time catches. And what I like to see was making a few people miss. Right after those catches, I mean, he made a couple guys fall down. So I'm excited, man, because, Court, just think back. Your first start, right, as a rookie, like what kind of emotions did you have? What was going through your mind? Because that's exactly what he's going to be going through, especially at a home crowd in front of, Tim Hortons Field.
Well, I got christened in the CFL my rookie season. The first start that I got was in Regina at the old Mosaic. And, those fans don't take it easy on you. I remember lining up across from a veteran receiver who thought that it would be a great idea to just welcome me to the league with a headbutt on the first play. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of that same energy coming from the Argos DBs. They know full well who they're lining up against, and there is a huge mental component to this game. So getting inside of somebody's head and playing the game within the game, as they say, I think those are the types of things we can see, especially if you zoom in ISO cam on some of these players and their individual efforts through the game. Another receiver that hasn't been seeing too much action lately that we're going to get to witness his return to the field, David Unger III. He's a guy who's contributed a lot in the past, and I think Matthew Schultz is going to need all of his weapons today. Of course, you've got Tim White, and you've got Stephen Dunbar Jr. and Lamar Durant, all names of guys who've contributed in the past. But with a new quarterback, a couple of new receivers, I think that we will see maybe a more basic, but hopefully a clicking offense. If you're Tommy Condell, do you come out like they did in Toronto and throw that thing deep? I thought that if they hit that play, it could have cracked the game wide open. On the first drive, they threw the ball, I think, 40 yards down the field. It ended up being incomplete, but we knew the tempo right away. How do you think Tommy Condell opens this game? Do you think they're feeding Keandre, Unger, Tim White, the guys who haven't touched the ball as much? Or do we see Don Jackson, who had a humongous game last week with over 60 in the air and another 47 on the ground? How do you open this game if you're the Ticats?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is, Tommy looking back at, okay, what helps Matt Schultz be the best Matt Schultz he can be? And I think everybody's seen it on the field. It's when he's running. Right? It's when he has the ability to pull the ball, whatever it might be, in a read, to, get out on the perimeter and make some guys miss. So what I'm expecting to see is a lot of that. Maybe a few two-back sets to get some of these new receivers, or a guy like David Unger, just kind of a slow start into the offense again, or a Keandre Smith, right? Just a slow start as opposed to being out there 100% of the snap. So look for some two-back stuff, I think. You really have to lean on the running game of both Matt Schultz and Don Jackson and Sean Thomas Erlington, right? So I think when Tommy looks at really what helps Matt Schultz is, let's get some of these guys in, have the ability to hand the ball off, have the ability to run it himself, and then just have some simple pass plays, off of that. So something to Stephen Dunbar or Tim White, just simple reads, right? 1, 2, if not there, take it, run, try to get what you can, or get a check down to one of those running backs that are coming out of the backfield. But I think when you look at the Ticats and what they've done well with Schultz is exactly that, is get him the ball and get him running.
Now, Schultz has given the Ticats a little bit of a insurance policy all through the year. You know that you have a bona fide guy with reps behind your starting quarterback. So maybe some of those quarterback design runs that we saw Dane have, or maybe even the ones that Schultz came into the game and took on, you feel a little bit more comfortable because you've got two guys who could step into that spot. With Dane out of the picture, you got Jamie Newton, Jalen Morton as the backups, combined 3 years experience between the two guys. None of them really been a starter in this league. Do you feel confident running with Schultz, knowing that he's one hit away from throwing a guy who's less experienced in the pros into the fire? Or do you protect that quarterback a little bit more?
Yeah, I think maybe you're a little more conscious, but Court, to be honest, the situation that the Ticats are in, right, going down 1 against the Argos, Montreal beating Winnipeg last night, they need to start winning now, right? And we always talked about it. We said, you know what, don't panic. It's not Labor Day yet. But with the stretch that's coming up, this is kind of that, Labor Day type feeling where we need to win some of these games. The Ticats need to start pulling some wins out of this. And I think the situation they're in is, especially with the crossover that we had talked about before, you need to finish that top 1 or 2. And to drop a tiebreaker against the Argos, and I think that's not even in their mind, right? So I think you look at this game as, nope, we need to win this game. Whatever's going to help us win this game. And you've heard Coach O say it time and time again. It doesn't matter what we have to do to win the game, but we'll do what makes us win the game. So if that's running the ball with Schultz, well, they'll say, hey, Matt, run the ball. Maybe Tommy's in his ear saying, hey, but at the end of the run, just slide.
Please slide.
Maybe that's the way, you know?
Please slide.
Yeah. Maybe that's the big difference as opposed to, get those extra yards. It's, hey.
Talking about putting pressure on quarterbacks. This week, we will not see Mason Bennett, Malik Carney starting at that defensive end spot, along with Micah Johnson, Dylan Wynn, Julian Hauser. This D-line has been getting a lot of pressure lately. I think it's been reflected in the opportunities that the DBs are getting. Also, the strong performance against the run. You got a guy like Andrew Harris, known for being a tough runner, especially inside between the tackles. He was, 14 attempts, less than 50 yards. So they did a number on him to contain him. And I think that gave the Ticats an opportunity to be in the game for as long as they were. But let's talk about this back end. Very talented. These guys are at the top of the league in pass breakups. They're stopping people from the explosive plays, typically, except that 49-yarder they gave up, which led to points last week. But between Jamal Roll, Cariel Brooks, Tunde Adelke, Richard Leonard, Ciante Evans, are these guys going to start turning the ball over? I know that you've played with all of these guys. What is it that they've got to do to have an even greater impact? They've been playing well. They have been playing well. But like you said, a team that needs to win, needs to make big plays. What do they have to do to impact this game?
Yeah, it's and Court, you know this better than most, is you just have to catch the ones that come to you. That's it, right? They had 3 opportunities last game that could have blown that game open, right? You get one of those, Court. You know what that does to the defense. You know what that does to the opposing offense. Gives field position for the other offense. Like, catching one of those interceptions, that's a huge, huge play. When you look back at that last game, Coach O said that there's certain plays that happen that'll determine the game, determine the outcome of the game, right? There's 6, 7 plays that are really what defines that story of the game. And I think, not catching 1 or 2 or all 3 of those opportunities that they had at interceptions, that's just a backbreaker, right? Because those almost directly lead to points as long as you get some field position or score yourself, right? Because there are 5 guys on the field. When you intercept the ball, there are 5 guys on the field that if you get tackled by, you will never hear the end of it, right? 5 of those old linemen running downfield trying to cover an interception return. I mean, you know how it goes. If you get caught by one of those guys in the open field and not score a touchdown, you're never hearing the end of it. So that's a huge, huge, huge opportunity to score or get into good field position. So I think that's all they need to do in that back end is catch the opportunities, because you're right. They're there. They're making plays. They're around the ball. They just have to catch them. That's really it.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes easier said than done. I remember as a player, I always used to tell myself, you get 60 plays a game, give or take. Over an 18-game season, you're going to see about 1,000 plays. And if you catch the ball 5 times as a defensive back, that is less than 0.5% of the time that you're on the field getting a chance to make a play. You will be an all-star. So it sounds good. It sounds easy. But of course, that's why they're pros, and that's why they get paid the big bucks. So let's talk about this Argos team. They've got some pros over there. On the defensive side, Winton McManus, goodness gracious, 10 tackles, sack, forced fumble. He's been causing trouble for opposing offenses all year, having definitely one of the best seasons as a linebacker in the CFL right now. What is it that this defense is doing to cause trouble for the Ticats offense? The offense for the Ticats only had 1 touchdown, and in the second half, they were outscored 28 points to 6 by the Argos, and this defense had a big part in that.
Yeah, big time. But first, I want to give credit where credit's due, right? When we talked about this game last week, it was, we got to worry about that Argos D-line. Well, Ticats O-line, no sacks, right? Which is awesome, because when we were talking about this, Argos D-line is one of the top in the league, right? But when you have a guy like Winton McManus back there making 10 tackles all over the field, there's one level that's taken care of, but then you got to worry about the second level and the next level over there. So I just think what ended up happening was the execution dropped, whether it was and it's tough to figure out what the reasoning for that is, right? Was it not as crisp as routes, or was it the Argos DBs being able to cover a little bit tighter, right? Being able to understand what the Ticats were trying to run. But I think when you look at that back end, they lost a guy like Shaq Richardson, who usually plays a boundary halfback spot, and we'll be seeing a guy, Tim White, who's in that position as a receiver all day long. So I think when you look at this game now, is to have a guy like Shaq Richardson out, who's one of the best DBs in the league, gets under people's skin, right? And now Tim White looking for that breakout game. I think that's where you look to attack on this defense, right? Is something like, okay, Tim White he's feeling it, right? He's going to be a target for Matthew Schultz, and with Shaq Richardson out, that's lined up across from him, I'm starting to think that that's where that Argos defense will have a little chink in their armor.
Speaking about who's out of the lineups, Eric Rogers out of the lineups after his return last week, and a familiar face, number 16, Speedy B. Brandon Banks will be at the X position for the Argos. Now, McLeod Bethel-Thompson, he's been playing with DeVaris Daniels and Markeith Ambles a little bit longer. We know that he loves to go to Curly Gittins Jr., who was held to just one catch last week. But Brandon Banks in the lineup, he's got to do some things to the strategy for the Ticats. I imagine there would be, maybe a little highlighter, or just make sure we know where this guy is. He's faster than most of us kind of thing. Can we make sure he doesn't slip past? Because Brandon Banks has made a career out of those home run plays. Maybe not necessarily catching the ball 10 times a game, which he's done, but it's the one play where it's like the Viper bite. It only has to hit you once to really do some damage. What's it going to be like for Brandon Banks stepping back into Tim Hortons Field? Is he going to have fresh legs, and is he going to be a threat?
Well, listen, I want to turn this back on you, because you have the unique experience of going to play somewhere else and then having the opportunity to come back and play at Tim Hortons Field. Because I could imagine, and this is just me guessing, which I want to hear from you, but I could imagine it just gives you an extra bit of juice coming back on the field in different colors in front of all those fans that know you, in front of your teammates that know you. But yeah, what was that like for you? Because I'd imagine it's going to be very, very similar for Speedy.
Oh, lots of emotions. And we know that football is an emotional game to begin with, but the crowd at Tim Hortons Field is just electric. And so being able to feast on that energy, it is contagious. And for a guy like Brandon Banks, where you would not be shocked at all to see a ton of 16 jerseys in that crowd, I think for him, it'll be a moment where, he'll want to show the team, hey, look what I can do. I'm still who I know I am. I'm still who I was when I was over here making plays. And the fact that they parted ways, maybe they didn't end on bad terms per se, but you always have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, and you have something to prove when you're going back into familiar territory. So I think he's going to be charged up. I think it will take a little bit more for him to get tired. He'll be pushing through some fatigue, but the extra effort will be there. The playoff intensity will be there. Let me stay in bounds and try and get 3 more yards and run through this DB's weak arm tackle instead of stepping out. I think we'll see a little bit more of that from Brandon Banks. And when he's got the chip on his shoulder, look out, because I remember a game against Montreal a few years ago when he scored 3 times in one game, and he wasn't even on offense at that point in time. So he's dangerous, and a man on a mission, watch out. You might have to get out the way. Hey, so knowing all of these things, all the guys who are playing, all the guys who are not playing, what are the matchups that you're going to be looking out for? Because we talked about this team last week. We're talking about the same team this week. We're going to be talking about the same teams in a couple weeks from now. So there's not so much new stuff to cover, but where are you going to be putting your ISO cam? Where's your matchups that you're going to be keying in on?
Yeah, so number one, where I think, was really a differential in that last game, was the punt teams, right? And I didn't want to put it specifically on the punters, because what ended up happening is you looked at the net punting. So that's how many yards after the punt with the return and where the starting field position, how much total yardage that return team gained. Well, Toronto was 10 yards average better than the Ticats per net punt. So what that means is that they were getting every single return that the Argos were getting, they were getting an extra first down on that field each play, whether it was their punter booming it and their cover team stopping our returner, or us not having such a great punt and them getting it in good field position. That was a first down each punt difference that the Argos continually got. And when we talk about field position and turnovers and explosions, those being the big key 3 to win games, well, that's a huge, huge aspect. And then add on top of that the punt block, right? I think that's where this game needs to really turn around. So that's my matchup, is because I know Craig Butler, Craig Butler, the way that special teams unit is going to come out and play and the focus that is going to be on that punt team to turn that around from what happened last game. I think that's where that matchup's going to be, because when it's close games, field position matters, and that punt team is really what's going to change that field position.
Yeah, and on both sides of the ball, punt and punt return units, they've had their challenges over this season so far. Giving up 2 fakes on the punt defense. I think that we're learning by experience, and a lot of these younger guys who have been put in positions, especially with veterans like Curtis Newton not in the fold, especially without a guy like a Nick Cross, this situational awareness is something that sometimes you can take through film, but a lot of times the lesson doesn't stick unless you've touched the stove and gotten burned. So I think there was probably a few more conversations about twists on that punt pro. There's a few more conversations about potential fakes when we're at midfield in that go for it zone. And I'm interested to see the decisions that the returners are making when we're in that no man's land, 10 yards and in towards the end zone. These are all situational awareness things, but you make great points. I definitely know in the heart of my heart that the punt teams will have a huge impact on this game. I mean, you're going to punt the ball 7, 8, 9 times a game. And if you're giving up a 10-yard differential right there, that could swing great field position that starts out in the first quarter to the other team having great field position late in the first half or late in the second half, which turns into points inevitably. For me, I'm looking at special teams from a different angle. How about the return game? Specifically the returners. If Brandon Banks gets his hands on the ball, Lawrence Woods III, these are 2 electric guys. Lawrence Woods, He scored on a kickoff return touchdown, but as of late, he's had a little bit of the fumbleitis. That's a kind of thing that can get into people's head. But if he's mature about it, if he's got the mental toughness, especially with 2 offenses that, they're not really blowing games wide open, but they're moving the ball. I think scoring on special teams and scoring on defense would be huge for either of these teams.
Yeah, and that's what you looked at last game, right? Is that was, really what blew the game open for the Argos, was scoring on special teams and that interception for a touchdown. That's really what ended that game. And, you brought up a good point, that kind of no man's land for the returner. That was one of those other defining moments. So just to clean up some of those, I mean, it's just one of those things where all the bad bounces went the Ticats' way last game. So I think it's a no panic. It's a little bit closer, and they do have a good opportunity here. And then finally, we talked about the other matchups, like the G. Garrett Davis against Travis Voronkow, the Simone Lawrence against Andrew Harris. But I want to add one more on top of that, and we touched on it, is the Speedy B versus Jamal Roll. Right? If that's where Speedy B is going to be lined up out at that X receiver, that widest on the boundary side or the short field side, he's going to face Jamal Roll. They know each other very well. I'm looking forward to that matchup just because of what you were talking about, that extra juice that it's going to give Speedy to play at Tim Hortons Field. And Jamal Roll is going to want to lock him down and prove a point to him. So that's another matchup that I'm very interested in. But moving on to finally storylines, right? What are you looking for when you're going to watch this game, right? What is this going to mean? What are you looking for ultimately from an overview perspective? What are you looking for in this game? What's going to help the Ticats win this game?
Well, one of my favorite things that we always used to say was a mantra was, our D has to outplay that opponent's D. So if they only give up 200 yards in the air, then we got to give up 199. If they force a turnover, then we got to force 2. If they score, we got to score twice. So as a defensive player, oftentimes you think about defense, it's wait for them to come to you. But my storyline for this one, especially at a key juncture in the season, they say offense sells tickets, defense wins championships. I don't think we're talking about a championship right now, but we're talking about very crucial games in the division that are going to shape the opportunities that may or may not exist into the back third of the season. I need to see the defense step up and make amazing plays. They've made great plays all year, here and there, but finishing a game 4 quarters, 2 and outs, getting off of the field, can they force turnovers and can they score? Which defense is going to rise up? McLeod Bethel-Thompson, yeah, he's good. I think Matthew Schultz, he's been a starter as well. But when it's 2 rivals that know each other well, you've played each other once, you're going to play each other again, it's going to be the defenses that make the difference. I'm looking for the defenses. Who's going to have the tougher defense today? What's your key that you're watching?
Well, I want to add on to that, because what is the conversation like in that defensive room when you look over at the offensive side of the team, right, with the Ticats, and you look and, okay, well, we have Keandre Smith starting, right? Braylon Addison is out. Dane Evans is out, right? All these people, and you're in that defensive room. What is that conversation maybe between the players or between, because the coaches won't really say it because it's business as usual, right? They got to just listen, we're going to prepare like we prepare. But in those leaders, right, the Simone, right, the Tunde Adeleke, like those type of guys, what are they, the Dylan Wins, what are they saying in those meetings when you look over on that other side of the ball and say, we kind of got to help these guys out?
Absolutely. And the defense is, for the most part, healthy. Like, we've been calling these same names out for starters more or less the entire season. And so I think they have to take a little bit of that burden of getting this team over the hump on their shoulders. And these are guys, you're looking at vets. On the offense, we're talking about guys who haven't had a lot of action. We're talking about the offensive line finally gelling, playing 4 games together and celebrating these things. We're talking about receivers getting their first career starts. But the defense is completely the other end of the spectrum. The linebackers have played well over 20 games together, 25 maybe by this point. The defensive backfield, almost every guy in there has won an all-star, if not all of them. The D-line, they're firing on all cylinders. They have 5 sacks a couple weeks ago, and they're putting tons of pressure on quarterbacks right now. So this is the best part of this team, the defense. Make no mistake about it. It's always been a defensive emphasis in Hamilton, and I think that identity begins in that meeting room, in that locker room. And Mike, tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's exactly what they're saying in their minds. Listen, we have to go out here and we have to win this game. We got to win this game. If we have to go and score 3 times, then that's what we have to do. But we can't keep giving up, cheap plays to the Argos, because we're not like that. We're the position, we're the group that needs to turn this around. And that's exactly the conversation that they're having this week, especially after that, losing in BMO Field. That's the conversation that has been going on all week. So like you say, expect that defense to come out and really try to make a difference, right? Whether that's, catching the ball on interceptions, forcing that ball out of, Andrew Harris's or McLeod Bethel-Thompson's hand, whatever it might be. Really look for them to try to turn this game around. For me, I'm going to kind of go back to the well here in terms of talking about what is needed to be done. And that's to just get the ball in the end zone, right? You look at that last game, Don Jackson gets the pass from Dane, right? Dane finds him. Don gets in the end zone. But from that point on, it was tough sledding, right? And that's what's going to end up changing that outscoring of the second half, right? I know everyone's going to think, the collapse of the fourth quarter. Well, don't let it be close enough for that collapse of a fourth quarter to happen. And that's by scoring those touchdowns. So I just want to see the red zone efficiency pick up. Instead of field goals, let's get a couple more touchdowns under our belt, right? Spread that gap open, try to get that lead, because we start strong. The Ticats are always a fast starter, right? Spread that lead out, and then just defense take over that game and win it.
It's magical what happens when you find your way into the end zone. you tend to win more games. Hey,
score more points than the other team and probably win that game.
Best strategy. And hey, Ticats fans, if you want to see the Ticats implementing this brain surgery that we've been doing, this amazing idea of finding their way to the end zone, head out to Tim Hortons Field. If you can't make it, the next best place to take in the game is on the Ticats audio network starting at 6:30. Rick Zamprin in for Bubba O'Neill with Andy, and they will have that pregame for you, followed by Luke and RJ, who have the call. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. 7:30 Eastern time, the Argos head to Hamilton to take on the Tiger Cats, and we'll see who takes this division battle. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
It's game day and you're ready. So are we. Let us know your thoughts. Email us at gameday@ticats.ca. Courtney Stephen and Mike Daly are here every game day with their insights into today's game. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.